Welcome to the Never Ending 80s podcast. I am J.C.Hollywood. My guest today is a booking agent and concert tour promoter who has been plugged into the music industry for decades. His career started in the 70s as the lead singer for the band Finch, later to become Contraband. Then in the 80s, he moved into working as an agent for the Harbour Agency, where he helped develop acts including Hoodoo Gurus, Models, Hunters and Collectors, Ice House, Moving Pictures, The Radiators, The Cockroaches, Kids in the Kitchen, and many more. He's got a lot of fascinating stories about the industry throughout the 80s, and I had a wonderful chat with him. I hope you enjoy it. Settle in and enjoy my conversation with Owen Orford. Owen Orford, hello and welcome to the Never Ending 80s podcast.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Good to still be here to talk about the Never Ending 80s podcast.
Now, is it fair to say that the 1980s really found you in a period of transition? You just started moving away from being in a band yourself to working as a tour manager and a promoter. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, more as an agent. I was a venue booker. I went from rock star to venue booker to manager to agent to promoter.
Yeah. So basically, start of the 80s, you're working for Harbour. By the end of the 80s, you've started your own company. But let's start with your time in the 70s as a frontman for a band.
Okay.
So
I can remember.
No, well, that's what they say, isn't it?
I was present in the 70s, but that's what I think the saying is. If you're there, you can't remember it.
Yeah, exactly. So your band Finch, originally called Stillwater, which, if I'm not mistaken,
done some research.
Yeah, ended up being the band in Almost Famous. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. But it was just a name in the day. It was a hippie name,
Right.
By the river, the creek, by the stream. Take your guitar, and your girlfriend, and whatever else they did by the river. Stillwater was the name. Yeah. So we came from those beginnings. It was kind of weird, and we were searching for a lineup. We weren't quite there. We had a keyboard player at the time, and then we put an ad in the paper for a guitarist, and young 14-year-old Bob Spencer at the time came along with his mum, his dad, his sister, and his dog, and his guitar and his amp, and he just blew our socks off. He was amazing. I mean, he still is amazing, incredible player.
Yeah.
And so we took off really quickly because we're all quite young, and we were in the Southern Shire at the time, except for Bob. He came from Maroubra. But we had a lot of dancers in the area that various people, Pete the drummer and a bass player knew from their school, and it just evolved into, we were kind of like, the equivalent of the Cockroaches in the 80s, we're that 400 or 500 people band. We played all the time, had a lot of girls coming to see us, have no idea why. And, but they liked it. And we had a hard rock thing going on, and we ended up supporting all these glam bands, like Supernaut and Skyhooks and Sherbet. And then when we, got to play with Dragon, that was amazing. And their songs were incredible and made us feel pretty like we might as well give up now. Because the songwriting in Dragon was just so on another level. Anyway, I digress. And then, towards the end of the 70s, we sort of carved our own thing. We probably played every pub between Adelaide and North Queensland. And I got sick of being on the road, basically. And we had an American deal, and they wanted to change our name to either Outback or Contraband. And so we went with Contraband. And then 2 weeks before we were supposed to go to America, our manager called an emergency meeting, our manager Brian, and he's still my best friend to this day. And we thought, wow, an emergency band meeting at like 7:30 in the morning for a rock band, that's pretty crazy time. But it must have something to do with a big call to America. It's like, we had no idea. We just had no idea what it's about, but we thought maybe it was going to be a phone call to America and they'd tell us what fabulous tour they booked us on in a couple of weeks' time, which we still weren't quite sure what we were doing. But we were very excited about going, so we didn't care about the details, just the fact we had our tickets to America. Anyway, long story short, he came in 7:30 in the morning with a bottle of scotch and some Coke and sat down and said, just a big stiff drink, I got some bad news. And he said, the American tour's off, the record company's actually gone bankrupt and they've reclaimed the air tickets. So that's why he asked us to bring the air tickets with us to the meeting, which is weird. And anyway, so that was kind of, what are we going to do? So we all, oh God, and everybody scattered in different directions. I think I went down the South Coast and hired a camper van for a week, and I was just devastated, and went down the South Coast and felt sorry for myself. But we then, picked up and not long after that, we had multiple lineup changes at that time, and I think I was the only original member of Finch left at that point. And got a little bit sick of 7 years driving around Australia, so I decided to leave. And I walked up the hill I was living in Bondi at the time, and I walked up the hill to the Astra Hotel and said to Mrs. B, look, I think I can actually do a bit better than the booker, who was our agent at the time, Sam Riggy. And I said, give me the budget. What are you paying for the bands for the week? And I couldn't believe it when I heard the amount of money. I said, I think I could do a little bit better there. And we got some good bands in, and before long, it was Men at Work coming up from Melbourne. They were really keen, and Models were coming up, and I was organising them accommodation if they play the Astra Hotel, and then they did the city show, and I said, look, Bondi's a world away. It's a totally different market, and you can do both. And they kind of got it. And the Melbourne bands were fantastic, and we had a lot of like Sunny Boys and Inxs were going to play, but they ended up staying up in Paddington. Wouldn't come down as far as Bondi for Inxs. They were a bit nervous about the Bondi craft, but they would have smashed it. And then one day, I remember fabulous. It was actually a really great memory, and I love Vince dearly because he was in the Valentines, and one of my mates through the AC/DC Finch years was obviously Mark Evans, but his best mate was Bon, and Bon was in the Valentines with Vince Lovegrove, who managed the Divinals at that time.
Right.
And he came to see me one day and knocked on the door, and I was really surprised. I was surprised to see him. He said, look, I've got a real big favour to ask. He said, I've got the American record company flying in next Wednesday. I said, yes. And he said, could you please allow the Divinals to kind of like play that night at the Astra Hotel? I just got to get a gig. It has to be Wednesday, and it's got to be like, I've got to make it happen. Can you help me? I went, yeah, sure. So anyway, we worked out this plan, and we put some posters up around the place, and I was always up at the hotel changing the posters. So I walked straight up the hotel and made a big display and put Divinals up, and it was either $4 or $6 to get in, or some crazy price. I mean, they were $10 or $15 at the time, which was a lot of money.
Yeah.
In those days, and that was the equivalent of $40 here now. And I just said, look, we've got to make this. Oh, that's right. It was $4. So it was a change out of $5. So, and I purposely did that. So we get like a heap of people in a hurry, because the Astra Hotel was usually free to get in. And I wanted a great crowd to turn up. So we ended up with, it only held 800 people, but we had 1,400 people, and a big queue down the street. And as he brought the manager in, the record label in, to walk them into the door, they had to go past this huge queue. And it was fabulous success, and they signed a chrysalis, and the rest is all history. But yeah, that was fun.
That's
and then
amazing.
Sadly, Vince, died.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible. That's a beautiful story. So basically, that was how you got into it. While you were doing your rock days, did you glam it up yourself, or did you keep it fairly working class?
Well, it was working class to the point where I wanted a point of difference. And when I managed a band called Street Level, who were the local favourites at the Astra Hotel, it kind of gave me a chance to experiment. Well, not experiment at their cost, but try and come up with some point of difference for them. And yeah. I remember when I was in Finch and Contraband that I had the long hair, and I always had this, childhood, boyhood, cowboys and Indians fantasy of Indians. And I was always on the Indian side. I was barracking for the Indians, like Cowboys were good, but the Indians were cool.
Yeah.
And I love the feathers in their hair, but they were strong warrior guys. And it wasn't so, effeminate.
Yeah.
And I sort of, for a point of difference, I had really long hair, sadly, none left. And I had the feathers and I did the beads and all that sort of stuff. And I tied them around the microphone stand. I had this thing where I twirled the microphone stand. And then when I went to manage the street level, I did a similar thing with him, and the lead singer was really well built, and he had a fighter persona. So I got him to wear this little bit of white fluoro tape, as like, when they sort of have a nick and they put a bit of tape on. He had his arms wrapped up with the boxing thing and with the tape wrap before putting on the gloves.
Yeah.
And he had that punch in the air vibe. And I've always sort of had that passion, to develop a show. Yeah. But it wasn't glam so much for me. I mean, the big, closest I got was, I don't know, leather pants, but they were Mark Evans, and he wore them when he was in AC/DC and gave them to me. So I thought that was still pretty cool. It weren't too glam,
Yeah.
A lot of glam bands. But that was fun. Nothing wrong with glam. Mark Hunter was glam and very cool. Mark Hunter in makeup and pretty out of it on stage a couple of times it was bizarre. It was amazing.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you gave the initial inspiration to Adam Ant there with the feathers and the tape and stuff.
No, I don't think it was an original idea, to be honest. I think the Cherokee Indians claimed that one.
Oh, yeah, they probably could. They probably could.
And when I actually saw that Adam Ant thing, I thought, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is not right. I like trying to emulate, what an American Indian,
Yeah, it's funny actually.
Appropriation, cultural appropriation.
Yes, yeah. Adam Ant was Prince Charming was the first album I ever owned and stuff like that, and I was very influenced by Adam Ant and stuff like that. And so it's funny, as you say, wearing the feathers in your hair, but not in an effeminate way. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess feathers in your hair could be seen as effeminate, but it's never occurred to me on that level because it was always just...
We were a macho band, we were trying to be, and tough, and we thought, we're rock and roll, ha. And then Rose Tattoo came along. Ian Ryland was like, and they were tough, and we just imagineered it really. We were influenced by Free. Led Zeppelin, and probably, I was heavily influenced by Black Sabbath only because I used to listen to them like constantly, and then every other album of that era of rock bands, and Led Zeppelin I wore out every vinyl copy I had of every record.
Yeah.
That was that era when you played records to death and then had to go buy a new one.
Yeah.
And it was in the bedroom, and there was not much to do. It was either study or listen to records, and I went for records every time.
Yeah, which seems to have paid off as a decision. It's worked out very well for you. So just for the people who don't know it all, can you explain exactly what a booking agent does and manager?
Well, a booking agent. There's a couple of different types of booking agents. So I was explaining this to a client the other day. There's a booking agent that can go out and get you a whole lot of money and a whole lot of rubbish gigs, or there's a booking agent that can get you a mixture of, some fees, but position you for greatness. If you're a great original band, and, different bands have different needs and different artists. And then there's, an agent that's kind of like somewhere across between a manager, an agent, and a promoter, and sort of can guide, a particular artist, particularly artists that blow up. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of luck and a lot of, I was saying to someone yesterday, I was mentoring a fellow yesterday, I said, look, make your own luck, but the harder you work, the more luck you are, the more luck you have. And I worked very hard, and I was very lucky to represent Tommy Emmanuel when he first started as he was a brilliant guitarist, and I took him out of wine bars into theatres, and he's like never looked back since. He's done theatres for the rest of his career since then. That was in the 80s, late 80s. And I looked after, Silverchair, which was huge and still is. And my client from that day to this day, when I thought, they changed the name to Silverchair till kind of now, when they're, indefinite hiatus, never to be millions of dollars. I thought that was the greatest negotiation of all time, by the way. Daniel Johns, he's a genius. I mean, he was a genius before then, but he's now a genius negotiator.
Yeah.
You know, people want what they can't have. That's what a booking agent actually does, manages expectations of people wanting something and whether they can get it or not and how much they're prepared to do for it, not just financially, but in positioning, billing, you know, appropriate other artists on the bill, what kind of venues, what kind of, you know, artwork, all those other kind of aspects, right? So yeah, there are booking agents that can do that, and I kind of see myself more in that vein as an agent promoter, you know, and for artists that don't have managers, and the closest thing they got as an advisor or a mentor. So I take that role very seriously. It's a lot of freaking work, but I have some very loyal clients that have done very well, I must say, you know, and careers that have lasted, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So that's a great thing to have made a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. How steep was the learning curve as you went into it? Had it been in the back of your mind that you might move into that sort of role even while you were still with the band?
Well, when I was in Finch, when we were in Contraband and that American deal fell through, that I mentioned, when Portrait Records, they had Hart, Ringo Starr, Dennis Wilson, and we thought, wow, and Drag, and we thought, wow, they're the pop band, we're the rock band, we can do this. And when that all fell through, Brian sort of said to me, look, he said, because I was obviously the oldest and I was the driver. So he said, well, you're now the tour manager and I'm going to make you the tour manager, but I also want you to liaise with the record label and to, you know, PR the venues and go in and see the agency and just like, you know, like hustle them up and motivate them to get the tours together and whatever. We've got no work now because we're planning to be in America for a year. And so I really loved that part of it. So I kind of right about then I started to focus my attention more on the business aspect. And I made a point, well, in those days, is the equivalent, I guess, of jotting down notes in your mobile phone. But I made a point of every gig we went to, the DJ was my greatest entree to promoting the band for the next show. I was always thinking of the next. Like, it's great to come to the gig. We're at the gig tonight. We're going to go over well. We're going over very well at most gigs. So I had a fair idea we're going to go over well. And my job was to come back and do a bigger and better show, right?
Right.
And I was always working with that in mind anyway. So that kind of helped me move into my role as an agent, promoter, manager sort of thing. And so I always kept everyone's name. So before we'd get out of the car to load in, I'd always check my little red book, and I had a red phone book in that time, literally, the little red book. And, you know, the DJ his name was Steve, and that's right, his girlfriend was Susan, and blah, blah, blah. And the manager of the gig was this, and blah, blah. I wonder if they're still there. And I walked in, and because I had that names already, and I checked them, and I remembered their faces anyway. I was better with faces than names. Yeah. And it was, oh, g'day, mate, how are you? Oh, and we've been playing Finch's record, Contraband's record, or whatever, you know, since you were last here. You know, everyone loves it. They went, you know, how many songs are you going to play off that album? Blah, 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 blah. It was just really great. It was, and that was the start of my networking, so to speak, and contacts. And it's invaluable when you can keep those connections for 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And some of those people that I met in those days, you know, and you know, even when I was a young agent and helping young bands out, that I can't remember some of the stuff, but there's a you know, duo up here in the Gold Coast, and the girl, she's not young anymore, but she was a young girl at the time. She came up to me and said, "You don't remember me, but I actually came to a Tommy Emmanuel guitar workshop one time in Adelaide," and I went, "I definitely don't remember." And she said, "I was only 12 at the time," and I was like, "I really don't remember." And no, she said, no, it's nothing like that. She said, "But you were so kind. You made sure that Tommy got to meet me and autographed my guitar." And I went, "Oh, really? Okay." And I've forgotten all about it. But she said, "I've never forgotten that." And I thought that was a really lovely thing. I mean, it's lovely. And I have, you know, I don't know, school. I was a teacher for a while, and school students occasionally, and they all call me sir still to this day, sir. To sir, with love. Anyway, but it's fabulous, you know, to be thought of in that way. I think that's a real great byproduct of, you know, doing your job and having fun while you're doing it and making a difference.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, that speaks to a certain authenticity that I think is the key to a successful, a promoter or manager or anyone in that sort of networking position. You know, an authenticity creates a better relationship because there's no falseness there.
Yeah. Well, it works for a lot of people that are prepared to give a little bit back, I think. And I've just got this new saying: do one kind thing for a stranger that you don't like. A stranger, obviously you don't know them if they're a stranger, but do one kind thing for a stranger every day. It's been so good. I'm loving it.
Yeah, right.
I'm really, really enjoying it. It's just like amazing. And the universe, it comes back to you tenfold. It's incredible. So that's kind of working really well. And I'm in a good place. So, I'm sort of at the end of my career, I guess, but I don't feel like I am. I'm sort of more creative and more inspired now to break new artists and find new artists. And I know I'm going in to see young bands with a totally different perspective than most of these young A&R guys. I mean, I can virtually see and map out where they'll be in 3 and 5 years. And that, I think, is the point of difference that I have that no one else can do, but not many people can do. And I was able to see Killing Heidi. I was able to see Silverchair. I was able to see Savage Garden. I was able to see it with a lot of those artists, Tommy and Hunters. I worked with Hunters and Collectors and Icehouse. I mean, I cut my teeth on Hoodoo Gurus, and Stuart Cooke, bless him, as a manager. He was fantastic. He allowed me to actually do my job and be creative and grow the band. And he got out of the way. And there's a couple of managers that just, Greg Donovan, Greenspan's managers like that. He's fabulous. They just get out of the way and let me do the best I can for their client, because they know while I'm doing that, they're busy doing their manager thing. And I really don't want to be doing the manager thing. Create the tours, build the tours, and with Silverchair, John and I and Paul Patico and Jessica, we were able to put together that Powderfinger Silverchair Across the Great Divide tour. It was just terrific. It was the biggest tour the country's seen for contemporary bands. I think John Farnham obviously had done bigger tours, but it was impressive and it was fantastic. A lot of work, nearly killed me, but it was so it was so wonderful at the end to see the result. And both bands, and then of course they both go off the road, right? So we did too good a job. But that, unfortunately, we still have to keep work on new clients and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Now we're going to jump into your categories in just a moment, but before we do, one final question: Have you felt the pull to return to performing at all, or have you performed since you made the transition away?
Yeah, well, look, at the beginning of 2020, and we just snuck it in at the end of 2019 and early 2020, we did a couple of warm-up gigs in Queensland, and that was the original Finch, Bob's, Tony Strain, Peter McFarlane, and myself. And it was thrilling to get back together. We only did a couple of gigs, and we sort of tested the waters. And I have to say, I actually really loved it, and I got a real charge out of it, and it was a buzz. But up until that point, I resisted, and Bobby invited me to a guitar competition, not a competition, but a guitar festival one time. And he said, look, I've put myself down for 40 minutes. I can't sing. Can you please help me out? And I went, oh, okay, that's a different approach, Of course, I have a savior complex. I'll help you. And I hadn't sung in 40 years or something like that. And I remember Kevin Borich was out the back. He was preparing for his thing, and a couple of other people. And I was so excited to sing Whole Lotta Love again, because I hadn't sung it with Bob for a long time. And the whole, my childhood, vibe, but wanting to emulate Robert Plant or do something like that. And it was just fantastic. The sound check was freaking amazing. It was amazing. All the crew, everybody was there. A couple of girlfriends from various members of the band. And Kevin stuck his head out from behind. So I must have hit that note pretty good, and the sound guy got into it, whacked on the reverb, made it sound bigger than Led Zeppelin. It was great. But that was fun. And Bob was just incredible incendiary guitar playing. And I thought, oh my God, what a shame that he was influenced by Skyhooks to leave, because he was tempted by the Skyhooks offer and he took too long to make up his mind. So we all got the shits and said, listen, as far as we're concerned, you're either with us and against us. You're taking more than a month to make up your mind. Just go and join them. You might as well. That's what you want to do it. You're only a kid, you're like, you go and do your thing. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. So we had to get 2 guitarists to replace him. Apart from that, we were fine.
Yeah.
And then he, obviously Skyhooks went really well, and then he joined the Angels, and then now he's with Rose Turner. But yeah, look, I don't know. I'm tempted to do something else again, but I'm not sure when. Probably in the middle of next year, maybe right. In the middle of next year or the end of next year. Yeah, before we all crack it,
Yeah.
See how it goes. And I'd like to get Mark and Graham and do some Contraband stuff and some of the stuff from the other Finch album that Bob and Tony were on. And Peter was on, but yeah. But like my priority is my clients and my life, and just getting a well-rounded sort of thing for myself. And then if I'm in a good place and the guys are up for it, and everyone's healthy and wants to do it, why not? It's the greatest buzz ever.
Yeah.
Do you play? You're in the band. Yeah, you're in the band.
Yes. Yeah, I'd sing and yeah.
Yeah, well, you know what it's like, right? Yeah. There's nothing like. It's not, I wouldn't say it's better than sex, but it's pretty damn close.
It's pretty close. Yeah. Well, and that was, I think we were hitting a bit of tour fatigue ourselves. And so, slight silver lining, I think, with COVID is we were not allowed to, we couldn't perform for so long. That passion for being, on stage is revitalized. Being on the road feels great again. So it's
you
it's
gotta
really
have
nice.
that. Yeah. Not everyone loves living out of a suitcase. I don't.
No, not for a long time. Fortunately, the way we tour is very much just weekends. It's not, weeks upon weeks on the road, which
yeah, that's easy. We used to do a week in Newcastle, a week in Canberra, 3 40-minute sets. Those were the days. Bands today, they've got no stamina. They're just pussycats, right? And I say to them, look, do you think you can do 2 45-minute? No, we have to do 1 hour set. I go, what? 1 hour set? You're building your band. You're building your relationship with an audience. Don't you want the excuse to actually go out and mingle with your audience in the middle of the sets? Wouldn't that be cool? That's how bands used to... Inxs, Cold Chisel, Midnight Oil, all those bands. What do you think they toured for 5 years doing that shit? They do 3 sets a night.
Yeah.
And that's when it was like thriving. There was a week in Canberra. My God, people, you're lucky to do 1 gig a year now, but we used to go down and do a week in Canberra. Chisel did it, Stars did it, all the bands in that era. They all toured like that. It was amazing. And, a week in Wednesday to Saturday in Newcastle, like that's unheard of, right? But that was the culture. And now, obviously, it's changed, but there's much more to do. And there's plenty of other distractions. And sport's a big thing. And, everyone's, of course, have got the social media. And now going out to dinner is a big deal, and that takes the place of maybe going to see a show. But I think with COVID, you're right. It's a different era now. And I think people have got a chance to really value certain things again. And, I think experiencing... great musical artists, and there's so much good talent. I mean, the silver lining for the Gold Coast, I have to tell you, because we're, sort of locked out or locked in. I mean, I wasn't able to go to Sydney to see my partner, which is annoying, and but nobody else could get into Queensland, and no international bands, no touring bands, and we had to quarantine Sneaky Sound System here so they can actually work.
Right.
We got them out of quarantine really quickly, and they've made a fortune because they were able to come from Queensland, and everybody else has been locked down. But the local Gold Coast musicians have just benefited so much, because people have really valued the good ones have risen to the top. Average will always be average, and that happens anywhere. But the good ones have had a great opportunity to grow, and there's some really exciting new artists coming up. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
The 2020s will be a good era, I think, after we get over this little hiccup.
Yeah.
The first 2 years, the first 10% of the decade, not too good.
Yeah. The maybe the first half will be the locked in 20s, and then the second half will be the roaring 20s all over.
The unleashed roaring 20s. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right, Owen, let's jump into the categories now. Our first category is your favorite 80s song?
Well, I've got a lot. It's hard to choose. I love all my bands equally, some more than others. But the song that really grabbed me was Goanna's song, Solid Rock. And it was the first, after listening to all that stuff that I was saying, all those bands playing in the 70s and whatever, we were just going around and around, mostly doing covers and trying to get our original songs together. But it was very much in a rock vein. It was influenced by America and England, and Goanna came out with this song, and I was a young age at the time, really inspired by the Melbourne culture. Melbourne was thriving. Yeah. And out of that came, Paul Kelly was another band I was fortunate enough to book. But, I got too busy with the Gurus and couldn't possibly book Paul Kelly as well. And Stuart, well, get Jared from Melbourne to do that one. I'll work on the Gurus because, dumb decision that was. Hi, Paul. With Solid Rock, it just had that kind of, Australian, but it wasn't Australian, like Slim Dusty Australian. It was like Australian, cool and modern and authentic, and with a nod to the Indigenous heritage. And I thought it was, unbelievable. And they were lovely people. And Rose was just like Rose. I just thought she was just so sweet. And, they're just a great, great band. And they were doing everything for the right reasons. They pioneered that whole thing. John Butler and Xavier Rudd and bands like that, took up, many, many years later. But they were that kind of act in those days, way, 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 way before their time.
Yeah.
Culturally significant. It was important to me, and it inspired me to think, well, wow, there's more to this thing than just, pub rock. And it got me out of that heavy rock thing. And I purposely wanted to do a band called book The Models, because of that. Not because of Goanna so much, but because of opening my eyes to getting out of the rock thing. I was the rock guy. Everybody just wanted me, the rock managers wanted me to book their rock bands, and I wanted to be more than that. So I purposely did other bands, and Goanna, I was only their New South Wales agent. They had a national agent out of Melbourne, but that inspired me. And then the Models, I heard them and I thought, wow, this is so cool. I want to be their agent. And, I was, and I did, until Chris Murphy took on their management and James Freud joined the band. And Chris, did everything he could to move him out of the agency, and eventually he did, because he had his own agency at the time. But anyway, that's life. Chris and I go back a long way. I remember playing a Finch gig. He's passed away now, unfortunately, Inxs manager, but he was a young agent. And I remember him turning up to a gig one night. We were sweeping up and cleaning up. And he came in, he said, listen, I heard there's a band playing here tonight, and they're really good. They play a Led Zeppelin song. I said, yeah, they're not bad. And he said, oh, but I've missed them, right? I said, yeah, it's like the gig's finished half an hour ago. He said, oh, okay. Do you know their manager? And I said, yeah, he's just over there. He was actually like Mr. Busy, but he was always that guy. And then, it was funny, Midnight Oil and Chris Murphy and that all used to ring me up, and they were the only managers that did it when I booked the Astra, and they'd ring me up and ask me how the bands went on the weekend. Anyway, I digress. You're talking about a song. So we've talked about Goanna. Yeah, next.
You can digress as much as you want. That's the format for the podcast. It's we just use the categories as a stimulant for conversation.
Okay.
But getting back to Solid Rock, it is. I've always been quite fascinated by it as a song, because for me it was certainly the first time I'd heard a didgeridoo in a popular song. And I've always had this image, obviously in the 80s, you've got a lot of guys, you've got that synthesizer sound is really starting to become refined. I mean, you had keyboards and stuff like that happening in the 70s, but by the 80s, different sounds are coming along. And I've always had this image in my head of people going, what on earth is that sound? And how can I make that on? It's obviously coming from a synthesizer. It's like, no, it's not. That's a didgeridoo.
Yeah, but it sounds amazing, that instrument. But the spirit of that band was genuine and authentic, and they projected that through that song. And that's one of the reasons I believe, just such a great, and took off and just opened up a whole new understanding and respect and perspective in music, especially local music. It really helped. I mean, and then Ice House took it to another level. Paul Kelly, the Hoodoo Gurus. I mean, there was just so much great music, Machinations coming out, and it was different. It was amazing. It was an amazing era for Australian music. And Gudinski was on fire. Like, he was signing everybody. He was the lightning rod for the company I worked for at the time, for Harbour. And I remember Gudinski and Sam and Michael Chug, the directors, all talking about, because I was starting Frontier at the time. They're all talking about, we're going to bring The Cure through. And we went, yeah. And Chris, another booker there. And he was a Kiwi. And we both split up the roster and sort of worked for Sam to be his responsible agents to get work done. And we kept saying, look, you got to get this band. There's a little band from Ireland called U2. You got to book them. Please, can you book them? And go, no, we don't think, And it went on like that for too long. And Michael Koppel got them, and it was this like bang, and they blew up. I thought, yeah, I can pick them. You know what I mean? Like, I had a vibe. Yeah, I think I can do this. And so, but I just had to have the deep pockets to punt myself at the time.
Yeah,
it's all about songs. Great songs.
Yeah. That's a great choice. I mean, it's a great choice. Obviously, you can't really narrow a song down to one song for an entire decade when you have such incredible music there. But it is a really good representation. I have spoken previously in the podcast about how the sound of Australian music at that time was unique in that it was that blend of the UK sound and the American sound, but it was also its own absolutely unique voice. Solid Rock as a song that doesn't come from any other country.
No.
That sound.
That's why I loved it. It just stood out to me as a song that was, pivotal in that regard. It was just, that was. I think it gave a lot of encouragement to songwriters to be, we can do this. We can be genuine. We don't have to follow the trends overseas. I've always believed that the Australian bands have been too willing to bend the knee, if you will to use a current term. But in those days, it always irked me that they're always going suck up to the Americans and suck up to the English when we just should have said no. Like, you had to swear on this program.
Oh, yeah.
No, fuck it. We're Australian. This is what we do. Midnight Oil went and did it like that. And I was fortunate enough to work for them, and they were fiercely independent, and they were doggedly determined to do it their way. And, we had our times. I remember with Peter Garrett when we were doing the Earth and Sun and Moon tour, and I planned this tour immaculately, brilliantly, as far as I was concerned. There happened to be in Rod Laver Arena on the eclipse of the moon, and but the only problem was it was pouring down rain that night. Oh, that day it was filthy. It was. I was just so upset, and it only just dawned on Peter. Well, maybe it didn't dawn on him just then, but it dawned on him by sound check that it was the eclipse of the moon that night, and he wanted me to open up the Rod Laver Arena roof. And I was kind of, I was a bit flabbergasted why he would even be thinking of that. It was pouring rain, pouring cats and dogs. It was like not going to let up. There's no way, the steely grey clouds for miles and rain forecast. There was no hope. And I didn't even think of telling them that was a possibility. Anyway, so he made me call the Environmental Protection, the EPA. And I tracked this guy down to get permission. I said, but you've got to get permission, blah, blah, blah. Those were the days where you just did it on the phone, Yeah. And so I tracked the EPA guy down at 5:00 in the afternoon. It was at cocktail hour, it was margarita o'clock for him, I think. And he was in a good mood. And I just said, look, this is going to sound strange. I know it's raining and everything, but the band have got this tour, it's called Earth and Sun and Moon. It's a total eclipse of the moon tonight, around about 7-8 o'clock when they'll be on stage, and perfect timing, really, except for the damn rain. Do you think maybe, I don't know, it's a long shot, I'm just humoring here, but could you give me permission just so that in case it stops raining, we can open up and the clouds part and hallelujah, and we get what we want? And he went, yeah, no worries. I'm a Midnight Oil fan. I said, fantastic. I said, look, don't worry, because it's raining and stormy, the neighbours aren't going to complain because they'll all have their windows and doors shut, so there won't be any noise problems. He said, okay, fine, but we really got to be careful about that. And so I raced back to the sound check and Peter, and I said, Peter, good news. Good news, mate. We can definitely open up the thing and drown the audience if that's what you want to do. And he said, don't worry about it. But it was a funny afternoon, a lot of stress. But and the idea was great, brilliant planning.
Yeah.
Anyway,
a lot of forethought going into it.
Yeah.
But did the rain scuppered the whole idea in the end, did it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was filthy. It was like just pouring, and we just had a good laugh about it afterwards, But it was like so frustrated because, oh my god, this happens once every, so often, once every eclipse, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. Anyway,
that's amazing.
I've got
all right.
couple of moon stories. I won't bore you now.
Oh.
Tell you the time that I came home. Oh no, I went to work when I was working for Harbour in the 80s. It's an 80s story. And Barnesy had played with Chisel up at the Lifesaver. Do you remember the Lifesaver? Like people know about that. Okay, the Bondi Lifesaver was the legendary. It was just so cool. It was the legendary Sydney gig where all the touring bands would arrive in Australia, throw their bags in their rooms at the Seabourn, and go straight to the Lifesaver.
Right.
And they'd be there for the night. They'd have a night off and they'd just stay there until they were blind drunk. But it was like, Status Quo and all those bands, they just go straight there. And it was just amazing. Chisel used to play there a lot. Well, everybody used to play there a lot. And I remember I was working at Harbour and I didn't go, but I remember waking up in the morning and Jimmy Barnes was on my couch. And I said to my wife at the time, I said, did Diane go out last night and bring this person home? And Jimmy and I knew each other, but you couldn't wake him up. And and she said, yeah, but I don't know. I said, look, I got to go to work, but just make sure he's got a gig in Bathurst tonight. I think I'm pretty sure. So he needs to wake up reasonably early in the afternoon. And about 3:30 or 4 o'clock, she rang me up at Harbour. She said, Jimmy's still asleep. Do you think I should wake him? Yes, definitely wake him. He'll never get to the gig. Anyway, so she woke him up. She said, sorry, but, blah, 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 you got a gig tonight? He said, oh, shit. He got up and he hitchhiked to the gig. Those were the days, right? Yeah.
That's amazing. And that sounds very. I shot a trailer for a film which never ended up happening, but with Jimmy Barnes. And while we were shooting the trailer, he snuck off to have a nap then as well, and he went down on a beanbag and somehow split it open while he was sleeping. Woke up amidst all of this polystyrene balls. What's going on? I was like, yep, that's a Jimmy thing.
Yeah, well, look, he was amazing, incredible, such stamina, and oh man, could he sing? He can still sing, but wow, in those days he was just unbelievable. He's like a tornado, a weapon.
Yeah. It's a great description. A weapon is 100%.
Well, Chisel was every band's go-to. Like musos would just flock to see that band. The musos band of choice.
Yeah.
And the best vocalist, the best guitarist, the best drummer. They were right up there, and everyone's. And because they came from Adelaide, they didn't get here very often. Didn't get to Sydney very often.
Right.
And so it was just really great to see. And they toured a lot. They probably played every pub in this country that had rock and roll, and in so many places. But anyway, wild and crazy. Whenever Jimmy missed the band at the band, the lobby call, he used to have to get himself there by himself, and he did. Who wouldn't give Jimmy Barnes a lift? Yeah, right. Hey, it's Jimmy Barnes. We'll give him a lift. It's a good story, right?
That's great.
Anyway.
All right, let's move on to our second category, which is your favorite 80s album.
Yeah. What did I say?
Well, you said, and I'm very excited about this because this is one of my favorite all-time albums, was Stone Age Romeos by the Hoodoo Gurus.
Well, yeah, only because Stone Age Romeos opened my eyes to similar to what I was saying about Goanna and models and that. When the Gurus came along, actually, a young girl who was at the school I taught at was working work experience at Harbour, and Joanne, and she said, look, there's this band called Hoodoo Gurus. I really do think you should go and see them. And, because they're really good. And I went, oh, yeah. I'd heard that before. I had, gazillions of people saying, yeah, I know this great band. And I was busy, right?
Yeah.
And then I did go and see them. And then coincidentally, the manager and Roger Grissom and Stuart Coote came in with all-nighters and Hoodoo Gurus and spoke to us about representing them. And I just put my hand up straight away for the Gurus. And like I say, Stuart got out of the way, he said, look, I don't know anything about booking tours, but, I can work the record and the publicity and all that. I went, yeah, and we can do this, and it was just amazing. It was textbook, 101, how to grow a band with a great record that just keeps on giving, right? Because every song on that album pretty much is a great track, and they played them all live, and the audiences, because radio wasn't that particularly favourably inclined to playing lots of Australian music, they played a little bit, for the quota, but they didn't play a lot of album tracks. And so the only way in those days that there was no internet, no Spotify or Amazon streaming. And so they had to come and see them live, and bands consequently played more, because that was the way you got to know their set and their songs. And the albums just sold, the good albums just sold and sold and sold. They had a life of their own. So that album just totally defined the mid to late 80s for me, because it set the band on a course that was unstoppable. And Dave just wrote such great quality pop songs, and they were pop songs, but they're also rock songs. But he just absolutely nailed it. But it was timeless, pretty much timeless for 3 decades. So he is that a contradiction in terms? Timeless for 3 decades, that isn't timeless forever. Okay. But what I mean by that is, okay, they don't last forever, but it set them on a path that they were able to trade off the back of that one album. That was my theory. If they never have a great album, because great albums don't come along all the time. And I thought, I've got to do a lot with what I've got. And if they never have a hit record, how best could I seed the band into the live market? Because they weren't your typical rock band. They're a bit, well, they're very alternative. They're originally called the Hoodoo Gurus. So they dropped that pretty quickly after they got out in the suburbs. But they were just fabulous, and they wanted to work. And I remember Stuart said to me, look, the budget is $4,763. I really to the dollar. And he said, yeah, that's for the PA, the truck, the 2 crew guys, the lighting guy and the sound guy, and they load in, load out, and all the backline. And he said, if we can keep that and make that money every week, we can tour for as long as you want to work. I went, we can do this easy. So we I just kept booking them. I booked them and booked them and booked them. Every 6 weeks they come around and do a different suburb, and then they do the Tuesday night at the Hornsby Inn, and sell that out. And then they do that for $4, and I bring them back 6 weeks later, $6 on a Friday night, and then go back on a Tuesday at $7. And I just every 6 weeks kept building them round and around Sydney and every other suburb and every other gig and every other town and every other state. And every time we toured or went out, had a new album, we'd include a new touring area they'd never been to before, and just kept expanding. So that, like what I'd learned when I was in a band, when Inxs and ourselves and Midnight Oil and Cold Chisel and Midnight Oil and all those really great working bands, they built their following one pub at a time.
Yeah.
And Gurus kind of did that. But at the same time as radio crossed over from Double J to Triple M decided, hey, we're losing market share here because these big, massive touring bands in the pubs are now not on our radio dial. And that was when it was a very healthy thing, because the Gurus were one of those bands that made radio sit up and take notice. It was the other way around. It's like what I was saying about when we go to England and America, we've got what they want. And sooner or later, everyone has to get with that program, provided it's good quality. And I'm not talking about also rans and average acts and crappy songs. I'm talking about bands with great songs, great live, and a fun vibe, right?
Yeah.
And it's just perfect for that time in the early to mid 80s, that that's kind of the essence of that era. It was a fun, just a wonderful time. And Gurus in that album, Age Romeos. And incidentally, Stuart's wife, Yanni at the time, was the artist, and she put a little "Thank you, Owen" in the drawing on the back of the album. And I didn't even know it was there until someone pointed it out to me one day, and I went, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah, man. Have you any idea how cool that is?" I went, "Oh, yeah, okay, it's really cool." But I was just too busy booking their great tours, and then I promoted their tours. I remember Ganinsky one day came in. I had this tour, and of course, it had Tuesday and Wednesday in Brisbane at Festival Hall, and Festival Hall was massive. And sorry, it wasn't massive, but it was Brisbane's Horton Pavilion, a bit smaller. And he came in, he did the whole, at a glance, and went, "What do you mean you've got them on a Tuesday and Wednesday night in Brisbane? That's going to stiff like crazy. Are you mental?" I said, "It's Echo, it's show day on the Wednesday. It's like the Tuesday's like a Friday night, Michael. It's not, I've thought about it." It's going to be okay. And you'll be lucky to sell one show out. You've got Ganinsky, Bluff and Bluster, and they sold 2 shows out, turned them away. It was massive. And the only reason I knew that was because the time that would happen, and I was so confident, is because I went on tour as much as I could with them to see the results of the plan, right? And so I always used to skive off and go to Brisbane when they're playing Brisbane, go to Melbourne, go to Perth, go to Adelaide. And I happened to go to the last tour they played, and they played this gig called the Manhattan. I think it's the Met now in Brisbane, in Fortitude Valley, but it was massive, and might have been pulled down, and it was massive. And I distinctly remember the Hoodoo Gurus playing, and it sold out at 1,500, right? And I thought, great. And then in those days, and it's probably an evil thought, and I probably shouldn't say it, but I will. In those days, there wasn't a big thing about fire traps, even though we probably, the responsible people would have thought about that, but it wasn't as heavy as it is now, right? And there was no licensing, but that happened later. And I was as responsible as every other agent, and if they could get 1,500 or 1,800 in there, I think we could. And usually Gurus would get another couple of hundred in and break all the records. But on this particular night, it was so packed that the condensation was dripping from the roof. And it was insanely packed. It was so packed that my guest list, or their guest list rather, couldn't get in. And those metal shutter, the chain mail see-through metal shutters that they have on those shop fronts?
Yes.
It was a safety grill, right? So instead of just having security, because there was like 600 or 700 people outside in the courtyard trying to get in that couldn't get in. And the guests would come in, and every time a guest would come in, 100 would bum rush the door. And we'd have another 100 in there. Like, we didn't get paid for it either, but we'd have another 100. And then we had another 100. We must have had 2,000 people in this gig that would have, anyway. But it was a fantastic gig the whole bit. And I was there, so I knew. And we still had another few hundred outside. So it was easy. We'd do one festival, or I could be easy. And the second one, be on Echo show day. Everyone wants to go and see the Gurus on show day. So yeah, anyway, so Ganinsky would, "Oh yeah, you were right. I was wrong. Yeah, okay. Well done, son." But yeah, he's a lovely man. And he was always first in the office. I always used to remember, I like starting early in the morning, and I have fond memories of opening up the office, and I just hear, "Hello? Is anyone here? Who the hell's in here at this time?" And it'd be Michael Ganinsky, but he hadn't gone home. I was just starting work at 5:30, 6 in the morning or whatever. And he hadn't gone home. He just come straight from wherever he was, the Man's Room, or out with an international band that night in Sydney. And I had no idea he was even in town, to be honest, but I should have realised he usually travelled with most of the internationals that Frontier toured. But he would come in the morning and just doing his emails and whatever for America. Or it wasn't emails in those days, telexes it was, and phone calls and stuff like that. And but yeah, we had this kindred sort of spirit thing, and he was really quite chuffed that I was in there, at such an early time. But I just preferred to get all that stuff done before everyone got in the office. I couldn't concentrate when it was like 7 agents in the room, a couple of secretaries, and those were the days when you're a booking agent, and that's why I couldn't concentrate, is because the days of a booking agent in the 80s, it was he who could yell the loudest and slam a Bakelite phone down and almost break it, but preferably not quite, because you had to use that phone to book the next gig. But it was like, "You'll never work. I want the fucking money now." It was that shit going on all day, and it was like madness. It was a circus. So Yeah, I'd like to get in early and do a couple of hours before the office over.
Before the yelling started.
For the yelling, yeah, the yelling. Oh my God. Yeah, it was the era of yelling. And I swore when I left there, like it was the time to get out and I had to get out. But when I left, the yelling has to stop. Mind you, the yelling did continue a little bit. I'm prone to yell occasionally myself, but sometimes you have to yell to get your point across.
Yeah.
And the promoter of the day, we used to yelling, so that if you didn't yell, they thought you were a pushover. So the yelling just escalated.
Yes, I mean that is fabulous. Stone Age Romeos, I would say, was probably the first exposure to what I consider to be essentially a perfect album. The artwork is fantastic, but it starts so strong with what I like, and then it just keeps going. And the only lull for me, obviously, as a young kid, because I had my brother introduced me to it, so I had a cassette tape with Stone Age Romeos on one side and Mars Needs Guitars on the other. And so you hit this lull with Zanzibar because a kid doesn't want to sit there and listen to this slow sort of Zanzibar song. But then
still pretty cool.
It's still pretty, but then you hit Leilani, which I think is the perfect constructed song.
Yeah,
just
right.
Unbelievable. And it's funny because I was thinking about it after you sent through this, and I was like, it's funny because that creates tension and catharsis. You have this slow song followed by just an absolute
cracker.
Just a breakneck song, unbelievable track. And I remember talking to someone once, about it was a different album, but I remember saying to them, they were like, "Oh, I hate this song," and I'm like, "But you that song allows this song to be so perfect." And that's the case I find with the Zanzibar into Leilani, butting up against each other. It is euphoric.
I never thought of it like that, but that's a good point. I love that era where albums were constructed so that you'd listen in the way that the artist, good on Adele for getting rid of, hiding the shuffle button. But yeah, I loved it for that reason. It got messed up with Greatest Hits, but Greatest Hits, as I've been reminded by various people, are for people who aren't the core fans. The core fans have got the album and they remember that. I'm singing the next Led Zeppelin song as the last one fades. And I'll read in my head. It's like just imprinted. So it was a great thing, and it was constructed well. And Dave, just a brilliant songwriter. I mean, he still is. But I eventually got to book them again with the Max Shaw album, and coincidentally, I'd just taken on Spiderbait, and they had Black Betty out. Right. And for that tour, and I put Spiderbait on their first big regional tour when I got to book Gurus again with my own company many years ago, many years after I left Harbour, after the Magnum Cum Laude tour. And I remember Spiderbait were freaking out because they'd never played a big tour. They just played capital cities. It's all those cool alternative bands used to do, just play the city, capital cities. And I remember, taking bands out. I took Hunters and Collectors out to Castle Hill, and had to show them. Half this population of Sydney lived west of there. They had no idea, because Mark Seymour was kind of the kind of guy. He used to like to run to the gig, so those gigs were a little bit far, and I realized that was part of the reason they didn't agree to doing suburban shows. But I digress, I know, but they were a gold album band at the time when I was looking after Hunters, and they always used to do Salinas, and we used to promote the shows and do their 4-sheeter posters and everything like that. And we'd always do, Friday and Saturday night, and then they'd sell them out and the whole bit. And then their records were only ever going gold. So I figured they were preaching to converted. And I had a discussion with the record company, I had a discussion with Michael Roberts, their manager, and just said, look, you have to understand City's population. It's in those days about 3.5-4 million. And I just said, half the population live west of Parramatta, and you don't play out there. And it's a real reason why it's not getting, I think you could do better, and you probably did platinum. And we got them out to Castle Hill. They had no idea. Castle Hill, 1,000 people. the first time ever. And they thought, wow. And I said, and it's Penrith, which is another hour west. Well, what do we do? Penrith and Campbelltown, and Revesby and Cronulla, Sutherland and Manly. It was like, yeah. And that's when they really got it. And then pretty soon they were doing platinum albums. And the same with Gurus in the same way. They ended up using their ability to get on Triple M to get across more of the suburban regions where people lived. Not everyone wants to come into the city to see the band. And in those days, it was a theory where you would do the city play when the record was out and get the core fans to travel in. Cool. So the coolest audience, the keenest audience to hear the new record, the vibiest crowd in the key city. Great. That works fine. You can't keep doing that. You have to do something different. And then the next tour should be the suburban, and then the next tour should be festivals if you've got the ability to choose, and then come back and do something really amazing in the city when you've built up and you coalesce and bring all those audiences in. It's easier said than done, but it can be done if you get the right band, the right songs, and the combination, with people wanting to work with you. But it was interesting, the 80s for me as an agent, and as for those clients and those songwriters and those bands who were able to cross over from alternative radio with a minimal listening audience, a cutting edge audience. There's no shame in that. It was great. And but then to break through and have Triple M and the more mainstream radio stations syndicated to regional towns, because they got it too after a while. We have to start playing these bands and they'll tour, and everybody will do well out of it. So that was good. A good time.
Fantastic. We'll come to our next category, which is your favorite 80s movie.
Like Crocodile Dundee was probably the one that cut through for me because it broke in worldwide. It was that thing that I said, my theme. You can see my theme here.
Yep.
It's very Australian, very parochial, I guess. But I was, I'm a loyal Australian and fiercely, proud of our ability to shine in contrast to whatever America's hashing up and what's coming out of Europe. I mean, there's some fabulous stuff, but we had fabulous stuff too. And really, in its day, it was groundbreaking, and it was a very powerful movie at the time. I'm not saying it's the best movie of all time. It's just one of my favorites. And Top Gun for totally different reasons was a standout to me. And I only really had time for escapism stuff. I mean, a lot of my mates were all into esoteric movies and going down to the World Movie House and seeing European trendy movies. But I just didn't have time. My brain was like just porridge by that time. Going to see a movie, I'd be asleep within 15 minutes if it was too boring. So if there wasn't an explosion in the first 10 minutes, I was like in trouble.
Right.
Or something exciting. It had to be exciting for me to go to the movies.
Yeah.
So those two movies. And Crocodile Dundee was probably the one that had the most impact from my memory now. And Top Gun, I think, was pretty fantastic for its time, and still funny, when you see him sliding around in his socks and his undies.
Yes. I mean, that's it's very interesting that you say, if there's not an explosion in the first 10 minutes, because in the 80s, that was really when Simpson and Bruckheimer really refined their action film thing. And I believe it was Don Simpson, might have been Jerry Bruckheimer. One of them famously said, like, if there's not an explosion or a love scene on every page or something, you need to rework it, because that's how you keep people engaged.
But and the 80s were good for that. It was pretty, it was throwaway. It wasn't so highbrow, but it worked for me. Like, I was working very long hours, and I just wanted escapism. So I got in the psyche of what I thought the average consumer would be. I tried to put myself in the psyche of that when they were looking at bands, and everybody's talking about international bands. I only had eyes for Australian bands. I was too busy to worry about Australian bands and my clients to think about internationals. But I time the same with movies. I would go and see the popular movies just to get the feel for what everybody else was checking out. Yeah,
which is a perfect way to do it. If you keep yourself engaged with the zeitgeist, keep yourself immersed in the culture.
Weirdly now I think of it, everything I did in those days was all about work, but even my recreation, I was still researching some kind.
Yeah.
But I'm changing that now, having a work-life balance apparently.
Right.
But, as long as there's a band playing, sort of not far away.
Yeah.
I can do that. I go out for kayak in the morning. Bands don't play that early.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Well, yeah, they might. You probably hear someone rehearsing.
Well, I'm thinking about that. I have actually thought about it. I went down to the surf club, for a walk with a friend the other day, and it was like the nighttime economy in reverse.
Right.
It was like 7 o'clock in the morning, 6:30, 7 in the morning. And the surf clubs were heaving. There was nippers. There was, it's a surf carnival, so it's a bit not like your average day. But, just thinking, you know what? Instead of these young musicians playing to 3 people and a dog at the mall or some cafe or bistro like in the shopping centre the other day, I saw maybe a morning show. But
Yeah.
it's all in the too hard basket. I haven't got the time or energy to do it. Somebody else can do that.
The show at the Nippers.
But I don't think performances for musicians, like, they've got a thing called Saturday Morning Sounds at Dust Temple Gallery. And it's just like brilliant. You go down there for coffee and you see a young creative artist from the Gold Coast playing a Saturday morning show. So they can, people that can play ticketed shows or whatever, just go down there and do this cool little 2-hour thing. And it's very cool.
That's great.
I think that's a good way to get creatives. People go to art galleries and whatever, they're going to see a band. They know a good act. They know a good song, and they get to play their originals and whatever in a different time slot where people are thinking a bit more rather than out partying, making a lot of noise.
Yeah.
Just a thought. That's
great. Love it. Let's move on to your next category, which is your favorite 80s TV show.
Well, for me, it was Countdown. Countdown was the most formative, powerful dictator in a way, but trend indicator. That was the equivalent to something trending on Twitter. Really, it was like if it didn't, if a song got recommended, or Molly Meldrum sort of raved about a band, or he berated the crowd for booing Queen off stage, telling Australians they all should be embarrassed. They'll be one of the biggest bands in the world, and we're stupid not to recognise it. And he was right. And Madonna, he was championing Madonna from the minute she first released a song, and same with a gazillion other international acts. Blondie was another one, but it was just a very powerful vehicle because Australia pretty much tuned in. Sunday evenings were most, in those days, in the 70s and 80s, it was traditional that you'd be at home for Sunday dinner. Like mum and dad would be pretty annoyed if you're out on a Sunday night and you weren't home for dinner. So Countdown came on at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. I can't even remember now, but it was 6. I think it was 6. So it was just before dinner or right on dinner. And so everyone sat around watching Countdown, and it was a stupid show in a way, but it was fantastic. Like, I got to see all the latest and greatest breaking things while I was having my dinner on Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening. And so did everybody else. And, it was a great way to break bands. But now, you've got to watch the YouTube, get the email, sign up to this, go to this platform, subscribe to that. It was just fed to you by the ABC. It was terrific.
Yeah.
And, it was a tastemaker actually coming up with a program that they thought you would like. There was something for everybody. There's something for an older audience. It wasn't sort of slanted to one or the other. It was like mainstream, but popular. But Molly was prepared to break cutting edge acts as well.
Yeah.
And he did. And all credit to him. And, what he did with Russell Morris was just incredible. Okay, that's going back a decade, but it was a groundbreaking stuff. But anyway, that was why I say that's my favorite 80s TV show.
Yeah, well, I guess, as we've discussed pretty much through the 80s for you, if it wasn't related to music, it was just getting in the way. It's interesting. I've never really thought about Countdown in that way. The genius of the programming was that it would be entire families that would watch it. It wasn't just it wasn't just the teenagers.
And brothers and sisters. And so, they'd hear their older brothers and sisters playing that music in their bedrooms, but they'd see it on telly, right? And it was the start, like in the mid-'80s particularly, it was just the start before, well, the other reason the 80s was so strong and powerful in music was because, and the recording companies really screwed up here, is because they let MTV take over. It was a powerful tool to promote their records and promote their songs. And then before you know it, zimzalabim, it was all about the film clip. And we would go, they're spending how much on the film clip and nothing on the marketing of the tour?
Yeah.
You know, like, really? Do we think that's the smartest play here with all use of the money? But because they got it on the film clip on MTV and it became a powerful vehicle to sell more, hundreds of thousands more records, everyone was making so much money. They didn't care.
Yeah.
But then when that era sort of started to wane and film clips weren't as strong, it was, oh, what are we going to do? We're going to have to prop up the touring because touring's the only place we're making money now. You know what I mean? Like, so it's almost like, touring away, don't worry about that. Just spend $1 million on a film clip, it'll be fine. You'll take over the world in no time flat. It will, yeah, you could. But it's the equivalent now to somebody going viral. So you could, you know, it's like winning a lottery, or we'll do it the right way and build it up credibly with an audience live. Like, I'm not lying through and through. I've heard every story in the book. I've seen everybody, you know, oh yeah, but you got to do this, you got to do that. You know, without a great live show, you got nothing.
Yeah.
So, you know, band's only as good as their next great live show, in my opinion. And if they've got great songs and they've got an ability to present well and think about how they're going to interact with their audience, and they know their audience and give, you know, to a certain extent, give the audience what they want, and have got something different about them, a point of difference, then, you know, they usually do pretty well, provided they make their own luck. Do a lot of work.
It is something that is definitely missing. And I don't see how you do it now, but that sort of one place where for 90, was it 90 minutes or was it 60 minutes, the show? I think it went for about 90 minutes, didn't it?
Count it.
Yeah.
No, it was only 60 minutes. It was only an hour. Yeah, it was an hour, but no, it was an hour of power. It was pretty good.
Yeah. But having all of that live music in the one place, not having that now, it really is, it really hurts, because a film clip presents one view of something, but it's not enough. And I mean, I think one of the things that we've found in the modern era is there's a lot more music there, but you niche down so far that, you know, you only watch the one band, you know, you watch bands that you already like performing live. It's not that you watch them and then suddenly there's a band that you don't know, but here's a live clip of them, or, you know,
the discovery.
Yeah.
The discovery. And a tastemaker will do that. A tastemaker will lead you and show you good music in a vein that you might be interested in, or that they think is necessary for people to be aware of. Now I go, hey, I've discovered this fantastic act. Hello? Anyone? I've been doing this for a while. I think I know a good band for a bad one. You know, they're like, nobody cares. You know, I'm going, okay, we'll do it the hard way. Yeah. We'll just build them up. And then, you know, what's that story? Success has 1,000 fathers and failures an orphan. You know, when a band starts to make it, oh yeah, it's so instrumental. I got onto that one first, and I wrote about them in this magazine, and blah blah blah, and this and that. And I put them, you know, it's like, and agents are always the first people that managers and bands come to. And we're often so far ahead of the curve. It's painful because you're the only person that knows the genius, and you just go, man, I've got this genius act, and you're just bursting to get them to a point where they can be ubiquitous. But you know it's going to take time, and time's the one resource we can't control. And you know, promoters go, oh, I'm not sure, I won't put them on the festival this year, maybe next year.
Yeah.
You know? And then you go, man, there's 12 months, man. If I could have gotten on that festival crowd, you know, and that's why people leverage. They leverage headliners, and but I'll give you the headliner, and the manager of the headliner doesn't know, and the agent's going, as long as you put this little band on, because you've got to break bands somehow, you know. Now you've got to put them in, you know, and build them up on their own or whatever. It just takes so long, you know, particularly around radios, just sitting back wondering, are they cool enough? Are they pretty enough? Are they this? Not that they ever say that, but you know what I mean. And wondering, and everyone's too scared to make a decision. Like, I don't know if you ever saw that video about that. Do you know of a guy called Bob Lefsetz?
I do.
He's one of my mentors, and look, he's just an amazing guy. He's way ahead of his time. You know, and Jeff, who you know well at the Australian Music Week, you know, he and Don sort of rang me up and said, listen, you know, you'll be so excited to hear that Don's agreed to do the thing. Will you do a panel? I'm like, yeah, I'll do anything. I've travelled to Santa Barbara to see him. Of course, I'm going to go to Cronulla, my stomping ground. You know, I used to live up the road. If Bob Lesses is there, I'm there. Anyway, he not championed, but he said, you need the first person to unequivocally make a commitment to an artist. Like, you know, you ever been at that gig where no one's on the dance floor and the band come on, no one's ever heard of them, a whole bunch of people go, who the fuck are these guys? Or this band. And one guy goes, oh my freaking God, like I've been that guy. I've been there with Dead Letter Circus. I've been there in the front with Emmanuel going, oh my God, I want to book this band all around the world, right? I've been that guy myself, so I know how this happens. But you see one person, one girl or one guy, or they get up and dance or whatever, yeah, the music moves them, right? If they can move one person, that one guy, the one guy is the most important person to get first. Then it's the second guy, and then it's on for young and old, right? So the one guy gets the second guy. But if without that first guy to make the commitment, the second guy is too scared. He's going to sit on fence, not sure. Yeah, all right, he's made a move. I'm going in. And then everyone's all right. And then there's a bum rush towards the stage and it's all over Red Rover. And it's just getting people to make that first commitment. You know, everyone's so scared and nervous. And I remember Gudinski used to come in all the time. He used to canvass all the agents. He used to come in. I'm thinking of signing this band. What do you think? And what do you think? What do you think? You think I should sign them? You know, it's like, okay, what? So if you get 10 yeses, you're going to sign them. What if someone says, no, I think they suck? Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got to be able to, and Michael had, but that was his way of doing his research. There's no such thing as doing a poll or getting a research company to do it. That was his. I'm not having a shot at Michael, but like too many people ask, oh, I'm not sure. What do you think? You know, I think you've got to be able to stand on your dig and go, right, I can hear great songs in there. I can see great potential. I think the artist has credibility and something about them that's different, that they can go on and do much bigger things in the future. Like I go, like A&R guys and record companies goes, oh, we want to hear the new song. We want to hear the new songs. And I go, how many songs have you written in the last 6 months? And they go, well, I've got 10. And some others will go, oh, 3. And, you know, some go, oh, well, I've got 1 I'm working on. I'm having a bit of trouble with the lyrics. You know, that one's going to be a slow writer. So don't plan on 3 albums in the next 12 months, right? But, you know, the one who's got probably 30 songs, half of them could be rubbish. But because they're writing volume, they're in the zone, they're doing their thing, they're getting their skills together and they're rapid fire. One day they're going to write a hit if they've got all those other elements, assuming they're great live, they've got a bit of style about them, they're a unique point of difference, and the songs are cool. You've got to go with, you know, this act is going to write some massive songs in the future. I'm all in.
Yeah.
And that's my philosophy, you know, like show me what you got, like make me feel confident that you're going to come up with something really special. Like Daniel Johns, I could feel that, you know, I could just tell, like, you know, he was playing grunge music, but he was just something about him, you know, he's fantastic. You know, obviously his career's proved that to be true. I'm no genius for recognizing it, but working with that band was eye-opening. You know, it's just a sensational ride. I mean, I remember I promoted a show for them at the showgrounds and 26,000 people with about 3 or 4 other people, a couple of friends, and in a couple of months. And now festivals they have an army of people in 12 months. They work on things for 12 months. I go, oh, really? I remember ordering $1,500 worth of fireworks, and the fireworks company felt sorry for me because I said, we've only got a little budget. And they said, I think we can give you a bit of a deal on that, because they knew there was going to be so many people there. $1,500 of fireworks, you know, would have lasted about probably 30 seconds. And you know, they gave me a lot more for my money, but it was great. But I didn't know any different, you know, but it was fun.
Yeah.
And and that was a real joyful time in my life. And that was really lovely hearing Daniel on the podcast. I've just finished the podcast, and he's went into it and out of it. He's come out of it, and I think he's, you know, headed to a good place. And I love the fact that, like I said, it was genius negotiating You know, I wouldn't do
Yeah.
it for $1 million and a gun at my head, and everyone was going, "You're worth more than that." You're fantastic. The price difference up by millions. You know, I want to negotiate that deal when and if, you know, they ever come back together.
Yeah.
On his terms, I guess. Anyway, right. So what do you say? Do you want to know anything more about the 80s from me?
Well, we've got one more category, which we've already kind of touched on in the introduction, which is your favorite 80s memory.
The vinyls.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was the promoter. I was there all day. I was just trying to make sure the police didn't turn up. We had too many people in the room. Yeah, it was the heaviest pub in Sydney, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like it was like the East Auckland Arms. But but when there was a great band, everyone was cool.
Yeah.
Because they all appreciated, you know. I remember breaking up the fight when I had the Angels there, and those were the days where, stupidly, I didn't even think about broken glass, and we had like 800 people. It was really crowded, and they'd been drinking all night, and there was broken glass everywhere, and there was a fight broke out, a couple of guys, and I was so annoyed with these guys. Like, I was just personally indignant that they would even think of having a fight and ruining the show. Like, I had no other thought than that. And I remember jumping in the middle of these two guys, and they had broken glass, and they were going to stab each other with glass. I'm like, "Hey, do you know how hard it is to get the freaking Angels to play in this gig? Or could you just be like a little bit more considerate and fucking go away somewhere and put the broken glass down?" I couldn't believe I did it. It was like, and I walked away and went, "Oh my God." I wasn't thinking. And bouncers, where are the bouncers? No, bouncers, no, we're not going up there. Too much broken glass and too many rough types. But yeah, I had another memory I wanted to tell you, and this is I think fondly of it now. When Contraband played, we played the Opera House, and forgive me, I can't even remember who the headline band was now. I think it might have been Skyhooks. And but a cast of thousands. It was one of those things where there was like 50,000 people on the Opera House steps. Anyway, Finch and Contraband were playing, and it was one of their last gigs. It was just before Bond passed away, and it was when he had time off, and he came out here on holiday. And of course, the first person to catch up with is Mark Evans, and Mark Evans was playing. And they didn't tell me, and they came to pick me up. And when I was living at Bondi, and oh no, it must have been in the middle of the 80s. Okay, I was living at Bondi, and they came to pick me up in the band car to take me to the show. And I jumped in the car. "G'day, mate, how are you going?" Yeah, there's Bond sitting there. And it freaked me out. I was just so freaked out that he was there. And he came to the show, and there's like 50,000 people, and I was trying to focus. And all I could see out of the corner of my eye was Bon Scott sitting behind the PA so the audience couldn't see him, like watching his mate Mark in the band. And sitting there for the whole show, and it was like putting me off. I'm like, oh my God. And I felt like going, you know, would you like to get up and sing? But he wouldn't know any of our songs. And I certainly, didn't want to get up and play an AC/DC song. It was hilarious. It was like, and it was the biggest crowd we ever played to. And all I can remember is just being terrified that Bond would think we were shit. Because we used to support them before he was in AC/DC, and when they had Dave Evans, they used to support us, and then pretty soon after they changed, Bond left Valentine's, went to Fraternity, and then got the gig with AC/DC, and then I heard he was the singer of AC/DC. So, oh, we got our work cut out for us now. We went to Melbourne, and we went to live down there, and then we just supported AC/DC all the time. They were just massive. Anyway, but yeah, lovely soul. And yeah, very, very sad. But him and Mark were just like blood brothers, they're really close. Yeah, it was very sad time to hear of him passing. But yeah, he lives on, Bon forever.
Yeah. That is beautiful. I think that's a great memory to leave it with probably there, Owen. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been so great to hear all of the stories and all of the memories from the 80s from you. You're certainly a man who's been in and amongst the industry for, many decades. And it's such a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to catch up with us here.
You're welcome, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So that was my conversation with Owen Orford. Thank you so much, Owen, for joining us. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let us know. Give us a comment or rate and review us on whatever your podcast app you use. And if you'd like to get in contact with us, you can send us an email to ne80spodcast@gmail.com. I'm J.C. Hollywood, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Never Ending 80s podcast.